All right. At our most recent meeting of the Council of Supply Chain Executives, mentoring and finding new people to come into supply chain was a really hot topic. How do you see your role in identifying and mentoring those new people in supply chain? And is this even something you spend time thinking about?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of
It's
course.
such a pleasure to talk with you. You do so much for our community. Thanks for all that you do. That's such a great question, and one that we at AdventHealth spend a lot of time really being disciplined and focused on. We, our people, it's such our greatest asset. They are the only reason why we are successful at what we are doing. And putting time and energy into making sure folks are cross-trained, making sure they have different experiences, making sure that we're preparing for our leaders, our next level of leaders, and making sure that we have the right pipeline of folks that are coming into our space is something that we as a team really have a lot of focus on. We purposefully reach out to higher education organizations where we have partnerships. We're a national company, so we really strive to have those higher education partnerships in all the different states that we're in. We have a very strong and robust residency program where our residents will spend 2 or 3 years really rotating through all the different areas within our supply chain. And when they've done that time, they're taking some of our management positions within some of our facilities and operations. So it's such an important piece that is for the long term when you're thinking about our long-term success as an organization, success as supply chain in general, really placing emphasis on our teams. We have an incredible team here at AdventHealth. I am so lucky to work with such a great group of people here. And continuing to place that focus is really where our hearts and minds are.
Well, I mean, to your point, it's critically important to be successful, to have great people, but clearly we don't have enough coming in, I think. And so, putting that emphasis on there and really think about it is so important. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks so much. All right. There's been a ton of talk about ESG in the last few years in healthcare. Tell me a little bit about what AdventHealth's plan has been around ESG.
Hey, this is such a great question. We are, from an ESG perspective, environmental, social, and governance, we've been on different places on the journey on each of those different legs. Our social side really started in earnest a few years ago, and they've really been leaning into some of the social determinants of health and all of that work over the last couple of years. Our CEO has really done a lot in terms of our governance space, and I think that space will continue to evolve. But the environmental sustainability side has really been one of the most interesting spaces. So our CEO asked about a year or so ago for myself and our chief investment officer to co-lead this entire space and build the plan. What is AdventHealth's environmental sustainability journey? And it's been so exciting. It's such a important space to unpack. It's so much learning in there, entirely different language, which I'm still learning, I'm still very much learning in. And we've been on our journey really planning out what is, how are we going to respond as AdventHealth? What is the right space to focus on? We signed the HHS Climate Pledge at the end of last year, which basically says that we're looking and signed up with the rest of our colleagues to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 50% in 2030 and to be net zero by 2050. Well, unpacking all of that is, okay, well, what does our current emissions look like? What percentage of that is scope 1 and 2? What percentage of that is scope 3? How do we get to a runway? How are we going to accomplish that type of goal? And so last year has really been a lot around unpacking all of our current state, putting our plan together about our future state. And as we've gone into this year, it's really leaning into, okay, how are we executing on that reduction of 50% emissions? I will say, in the supply chain community, we have a real role to play in this space. We are, at least for AdventHealth, supply chain accounts for almost a third of our emissions in our scope 3 space. And so when you really think about that, that is our supply chain leaders on the provider side needing to work really closely with our supply chain leaders on the supplier side, because it's the emissions that are created at the time of that supply manufacturing that then get passed down to us as providers and become a part of our footprint. The only way to really reduce that is going through our suppliers and having conversations, meaningful conversations about how we're all in this together. So I really see this as a huge place for an opportunity for our suppliers and our providers to stay very tightly partnered in the years to come. This is something that takes years to really see a difference in. And because of that, we need to start the conversations now. 2030 is not very far away to think about it.
No.
I'm super excited. I'm super excited to continue the conversation on this topic in many different forums. I think it's a really great place for us to all be leaning into.
That's interesting because I hadn't really given a ton of thought around the partnership between supplier and provider on that. But to your point, it's from the transportation, it's from the recycling, it's in all that stuff. So that actually is a whole nother, maybe another topic that we should do at some other point. But that's really helpful. Thanks so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
All right, larger systems like yours have a lot of challenges, obviously due to your size. You're in multiple states. You oversee multiple departments. How do you practically communicate and build relationships with all of them? Any tips, any tricks? How do you do it?
Well, you said we are in many states and it is exciting and difficult and challenging, but it is all about relationships. How do we communicate across and within ourselves? How do we, within the supply chain space, we set up a lot of different connection points. We are organized so that we have different levels of leadership within different facilities and then regions themselves. And so there's a lot of opportunities for us to cross-connect in that form or fashion. We hold retreats. We hold extended cabinet retreats. So I've got a cabinet and then their leaders also will come to our extended cabinet retreats where we dive into what is our strategy. We build our strategy for the following year. So there's a lot of intentionality and sort of elbowing out space for us to have those conversations and focus on what is the future and the roadmap ahead. We don't work in a silo though. And so supply chain has to lean on our relationships well outside of, ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important that we're building out those relationships, those partnerships, that network with everyone. Definitely on the clinical side, we are partners on the clinical side, on the operations side, on the finance side. We really sit in the middle of those concentric circles. Right. We're in that Venn diagram, we're in that mm-hmm. middle, really having to speak language across all of those different areas. And so making sure that we're meeting our customers, all of them, where they are, what they're focused on, what their needs are, that we're able to speak the language, that we have clear strategies in place, and that we have the infrastructure to be able to breathe information in and out of our world is really kind of the foundation for how AdventHealth is structured in this space.
It's fascinating because it's a challenge, and some people do it much better than others. And obviously, the larger you get, the more challenges that it faces. But that sounds like you've got it kind of figured out. And I like the cabinet strategy. I think that's it sounds very official, very, 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 very.
Well, it's always a work in progress, and we're not afraid to make tweaks and changes. You got to be open to making sure that we're, that it continues to evolve, and so should we.
Oh, 100%. All right. Thanks for sharing. That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We know you're really busy. You do a lot of work. You're obviously traveling some. You're doing a lot of things. But what keeps you busy outside of work? This will be interesting, I hope.
Well, I have a very active family. We love to be on the water, outside, hiking, whatever it may be, playing a lot of sports. Kiddos are busy doing a million things, and I like to be there and present as much as possible. On the personal side, I have found, a new calling in terms of, trying to trying to be a better cook at home and a better baker at home. I love the Great British Baking Show. I don't know why, but I get much inspiration from it. In fact, my husband bought me a cookbook from it the other day, and so I've been trying out recipes. Yeah, I mean, just really trying to do different things, whatever at the time may be. Maybe it's painting at some points, play guitar. So it's just a variety of whatever is sort of that moment that's striking me for fun.
But what's your go-to baking item? What would that be? If I came over to your house, what would you bake?
I love baking chocolate chip cookies.
Ooh.
But this last weekend, we celebrated some birthdays. So I baked a funfetti birthday cake, 3 tiers.
Impressive. You send pictures, please. We ought to post those below. That'd be great. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. And I'm going to some 3 quick questions that I always kind of like to ask and learn a little bit about you. What was the very first concert you ever attended?
I went to a Fish concert.
Ooh, oh.
Picture of Nectar, back in probably, I don't know, 10th grade, something like that. I went to school in Gainesville, and so at the University of Florida, they were having Fish concert there. So first time, it was very interesting.
I bet it was. All right, good choice. What movie have you watched the most?
All right, it's got to be The Godfather.
Oh, okay.
My husband is an avid fan, and he usually has the remote in the evenings. And so whenever that is on, that is what we are watching.
Does that describe your leadership style as well?
I hope not.
I hope not too. All right, last question. Do you have a favorite team or pro or college that you pull for?
I'm definitely a Gator.
Oh.
Through and through, bleed orange and blue.
Man, this is going so well until that. So
what's your team, Hayes?
I'm a Tennessee Vol. I am.
Right.
So anyway.
We'll still be good colleagues, though.
Yeah, exactly. But at least SEC. We're in the SEC, so that's a positive.
That's right. That's
All right.
right.
Well, you've been a good sport. I appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Hayes. It's a pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.